Lauren Mitchell had been working on the planet for 8 months. She was a scientist who studied alien animals and plants. The research base sat at the edge of a strange forest made of giant crystal towers. These towers caught the light from 3 moons and made everything glow at night. Lauren was collecting rock samples near the edge of the safe zone when she heard a sound. It was a small, high cry that made her stop walking. The sound came again. It was the kind of noise that hurt animals make when they are scared and in pain. She knew the rules said she should go back to the base right away. The creatures on this planet were dangerous. The military called them Vraken, and they were listed as the most deadly predators in this part of space. They hunted in groups. They could hide so well that you could not see them even when they were close. Many explorers had died meeting them, but Lauren had worked with animals her whole life. That crying sound was something she understood. It did not matter what planet the animal came from. Pain and fear sounded the same everywhere. Her feet moved toward the sound before her brain could tell them to stop. She found the baby Vraken stuck between 2 crystal rocks. Its back leg was caught in a narrow gap. The creature was small, about the size of a house cat. Its fur was dark blue and seemed to glow with its own light. It had 6 eyes, 3 on each side of its head. All 6 eyes were open wide with fear. When the baby saw Lauren, it made a hissing noise and showed its teeth. The teeth were sharp like needles. Lauren got down on her knees slowly. She kept her hands where the creature could see them. She talked in a soft voice, even though she knew the animal could not understand her words. But animals always understood when someone was trying to help or hurt them. The baby hissed again, but Lauren could see it was very tired. It had probably been stuck here for many hours. Its leg looked swollen and hurt. The glowing patterns on its fur were blinking on and off in a strange way. Lauren had read that this meant the Vraken was very stressed. She pulled out her small scanner and looked at the problem. The gap was too narrow. If she just pulled the baby out, she might hurt its leg even more. She would need to make the gap bigger. Lauren took out a small laser cutter from her tool bag. She started cutting away tiny pieces of the crystal very carefully. The baby watched her with all 6 eyes. It stopped hissing. Now it just made small crying sounds. Lauren kept working and kept talking softly to it. Every few minutes she would stop cutting and say something gentle. After 20 minutes of careful work, she made the gap wide enough. She reached in and slowly pulled the hurt leg free. The baby tried to run away as soon as it was free, but its hurt leg could not hold its weight. It started to fall. Lauren caught it without thinking. She held it against her chest. The creature went very still and hard. Lauren thought those sharp teeth were going to bite her throat. She waited for the pain, but the bite never came. Instead, something strange happened. The baby relaxed in her arms. The glowing patterns on its fur started to pulse slowly and steadily. Lauren had read about this in her research books. It was like a cat purring. It meant the Vraken felt safe and happy. Lauren carried the baby back to her workstation. She knew she was breaking many rules. The base commander would be very angry if he found out. He might send her back to Earth, but she could not leave a hurt baby animal alone in the forest. Something bigger might find it and kill it. Her workstation was a small building with 1 room. Inside, she put the baby on her work table and started to fix its leg. The creature stayed calm. It watched her with those 6 intelligent eyes while she put medicine on the swollen leg and wrapped it carefully. Her scanner said nothing was broken. The leg was just badly bruised and strained. When she finished, the baby made a soft chirping sound. It was clearly hungry. Lauren thought about what to feed it. Vraken only ate meat. They could not digest plants or grain. The food paste that everyone at the base ate would not work. She opened her cold storage box and found a package of fake meat. It was grown in a lab but looked and tasted like real beef. The base only had this for special days when people got tired of regular food. She heated a small piece and cut it into tiny bits. The baby's eyes locked onto the meat right away. Its glowing patterns got much brighter. It made excited chirping sounds. When Lauren put a piece of meat on the table, the creature jumped on it fast. It ate like it had not eaten in days. While the baby ate, Lauren made her own dinner. She mixed hot water with dried food that turned into something that was supposed to be pasta. She sat at her desk eating and writing notes on her computer. The baby finished its meat and licked its paws clean with a dark blue tongue. Then it turned to watch her eat. Lauren smiled and held out a small piece of her pasta. The baby sniffed it carefully. Then it took the piece in its mouth and chewed. A second later, it spit the pasta out and made a face that clearly said the food was terrible. Lauren laughed. It was the first time she had really laughed in weeks. The baby seemed to forgive her for offering bad food. It jumped down from the table, keeping weight off its hurt leg. It walked over to her chair. After waiting a moment, it climbed up into her lap and curled into a ball. The glowing patterns on its fur pulsed slowly. That meant it was content. Lauren froze. She barely breathed. This was impossible. The book said Vraken could never be tamed. They said Vraken hated all other species and would attack on sight. But here was a baby Vraken, one of the most feared creatures in the galaxy, sleeping in her lap like a kitten. She knew she should call the other scientists at the main base. This was a chance to learn things no one had ever learned before, but something stopped her. The baby had been hurt and scared and alone. It had trusted her when it had every reason not to. Calling people to study it felt wrong. It felt like breaking a promise, so Lauren just sat there. She gently touched the baby's soft fur. She finished writing her daily reports. The creature was warm. The vibrations from its purring were relaxing. When she finally needed to sleep, she carefully moved the baby to her bed. It immediately took her pillow. Lauren did not try to move it. She lay down next to the baby. She thought she would stay awake all night. She was nervous about sleeping next to a predator, but the steady pulsing of the creature's glowing fur and the gentle vibrations of its purring made her relaxed. Within minutes, she fell into the deepest sleep she had experienced since coming to this planet. She did not know that by morning her life would change forever. Lauren woke up slowly. Something warm was breathing on her face. She opened her eyes and found herself looking at a huge Vraken. This was not the baby. This was a full-grown adult. It was twice her size. Its jaws could crush her skull like an egg. Its 6 eyes stared right into hers. Every part of her brain screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But Lauren knew that any fast movement would probably be the last thing she ever did. So she stayed very still. Her heart was beating so hard she thought it might break her ribs. The big Vraken looked at her for a long time. It seemed to be thinking. Then it opened its mouth. Lauren waited for those huge teeth to bite. Instead, the creature made a low, deep sound. It was not a growl. It was something else. It almost sounded like talking. The baby, still on her pillow, chirped back. The adult turned its head to look at the little one. Lauren saw the big Vraken's eyes move to the bandage on the baby's leg. When it looked back at Lauren, something in its face had changed. Very slowly, Lauren reached out her hand. She put it on the baby's head and petted its fur gently. The baby made that happy purring sound. Its glow patterns pulsed bright and steady. The adult watched this. It seemed surprised. Then the big Vraken did something that made Lauren's heart almost stop. It lowered its huge head. It pushed its head against her other hand. Lauren understood. This was the baby's parent. It was saying thank you. She slowly moved her hand to touch the adult's fur. It was rougher than the baby's fur, but just as warm. The creature's glow patterns started to pulse. They matched the rhythm of the baby's patterns. That deep rumbling sound came again. Lauren realized it was their version of purring. A noise outside made them both turn. Lauren looked through her window. In the early morning light, she could see more shapes moving. More Vraken, many more. The whole pack had come for their lost baby. Fear hit Lauren like a wave. She was alone in a small room with deadly predators outside. But the adult next to her did not act aggressive. It walked to the door and looked back at her. Lauren did not know why, but she followed it. She walked to the door. Her hands shook as she reached for the handle. She opened the door slowly. Outside, the 3 moons were setting. In their pale light stood 6 more adult Vraken. The pack. They all looked at her with their 6 eyes, their heads tilted to one side. Lauren had started to learn that this meant they were curious, not angry. The baby limped out the door. It chirped excitedly. All the adults surrounded it right away. They checked it all over. Their glow patterns were flashing fast. Lauren thought they might be talking to each other with the lights. Then one by one, each adult came to Lauren. Each one pressed its head against her, just like the first one had done. Lauren stood perfectly still. Her scientific mind was recording everything, even though her body wanted to run away. But nothing bad happened. Each creature made that deep rumbling purr sound. Each one seemed to be thanking her. When the last one finished, Lauren thought they would leave. She thought they would take their baby and go back to the forest. Instead, the pack settled down around her small building. They arranged themselves in a circle. The baby limped back to Lauren. It pressed against her leg and looked up at her with trust in all 6 eyes. Lauren stood there, surrounded by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. she realized something important had just happened. She had not just saved a baby animal. She had been accepted. They saw her as one of them now. The next few weeks were strange and wonderful. The Vraken pack did not leave. They made Lauren's area their home. She found herself living among them. She gave the baby a name. She called it Nova because its glow patterns flared like a star when it was happy. Nova got better quickly. Within days, it was running and jumping everywhere, but it always came back to Lauren. Every evening, it would return to sleep in her room. It still took her pillow every single night. The adult Vraken kept their distance at first, but were always nearby. Lauren started to tell them apart. The biggest one seemed to be the leader. She named him Titanium because he was so strong and solid. There was a smaller, faster one she called Swift. This one often brought Lauren gifts, pretty crystal rocks that caught the light. Another Vraken watched Lauren with special interest. This one seemed to study everything Lauren did. She tilted her head whenever Lauren spoke. Lauren named her Sage because she seemed wise. Sage reminded Lauren of a scientist, always observing and learning. Lauren wrote down everything she saw. She filled her computer files with notes about the Vraken. They were not mindless beasts like everyone thought. They were smart. They were social. They solved problems. Their glow patterns were not just for hiding. They were for talking. The patterns showed feelings and ideas. Even more surprising, the Vraken were teaching Lauren. When she worked too long without eating, Titanium would bring her food. It was always fresh meat from their hunts. When she walked too far into dangerous areas, Swift would appear and lead her back to safety. When she felt stressed about her work, Sage would sit next to her. The calm, steady pulse of Sage's glow patterns always made Lauren feel better. 3 weeks after the pack arrived, Lauren made a big discovery. She had been studying the glow patterns, trying to understand what they meant. She thought she had found the pattern for danger. She built a small machine that could make light patterns. She wanted to test if she was right. Nova watched closely as Lauren worked. When Lauren turned on her machine, it flashed the lights she thought meant danger. Every adult Vraken nearby suddenly stood up. Their own patterns started flashing in response. They were reacting to her signal, but then Sage came over to the machine. She looked at it carefully. Then Sage's own glow patterns began to flash in a slow, clear sequence. Lauren recorded it quickly. She spent hours studying what Sage had shown her. Finally, she understood. Sage had not been fixing her danger signal. Sage had been teaching her a new pattern. This pattern did not mean danger. It meant question. Sage was asking Lauren what she was trying to do. Sage was trying to talk to her. Lauren's hands shook with excitement. She changed her machine to make new patterns. She created what she hoped meant understanding. Sage answered with a pattern Lauren had seen before but never decoded. It meant approval. It meant yes. Over the next days, Lauren and Sage had lessons. The Vraken taught Lauren their light patterns. Lauren taught Sage human words. It was slow work. It was hard work. But both of them learned quickly. They both wanted to understand each other. The other Vraken watched these lessons with interest. Soon all of them joined in their own way. Titanium would show Lauren how they hunted. Then he would wait while Lauren wrote notes about it. Swift brought Lauren samples from faraway parts of the forest. It was like Swift understood that Lauren needed these things for her research. But Nova made the biggest breakthrough. One evening, Lauren was sitting and writing her notes like always. Nova climbed into her lap as usual. But this time, instead of just curling up to sleep, Nova looked up at her. The young Vraken made a pattern with its glow that Lauren had never seen before. Lauren checked her translation machine. Her heart started beating fast. This was a new pattern. Nova had not used any of the common signals they had been learning. The baby had created something new. It combined pieces of several different patterns. Lauren studied the pattern for a long time. Then she understood what it meant. It meant pack bond human. Nova was not just showing love. The baby was saying that Lauren was family. Lauren was part of the pack now. She belonged with them, and they belonged with her. The situation stayed hidden from the main base for almost a month. Lauren's workstation was far from the central compound. She only had to check in by radio once a day. As long as she sent her regular reports, no one came to visit her. But secrets like this could not stay hidden forever. A supply ship came to drop off equipment at different research stations around the planet. When the pilot flew over Lauren's area, He saw something that made him panic. A whole pack of Vraken surrounded one of their buildings. He immediately called the main base with an emergency alert. Commander Gregory Hammond led the rescue team himself. He brought 6 armed security guards. They flew to Lauren's station expecting the worst. They thought they would find her body. Or maybe they would find nothing at all. Vraken usually did not leave evidence behind. What Hammond found instead made him stop and stare. Lauren was sitting outside her building in the morning sun. She was surrounded by Vraken. Nova was asleep in her lap. Sage sat next to her, head tilted, listening as Lauren explained something about their communication system. The other adults lay nearby in relaxed positions. The security team did not know what to do. They raised their weapons. They aimed at the Vraken, but they did not shoot. They were too confused by what they were seeing. Hammond stared with his mouth open. This was impossible. Humans did not sit peacefully with Vraken. Vraken killed humans. Everyone knew that. Hammond finally found his voice. He ordered Lauren to come back to the main base right away. His voice was sharp and commanding. Lauren looked up at him calmly. She said no. She explained that leaving now would hurt the Vraken. They would think she was rejecting them. That could undo all the trust they had built. Hammond's face turned red with anger. He said he would remove her by force if necessary. He could not leave one of his scientists living with dangerous predators. It was against every rule and safety protocol. That was when Titanium stood up. The huge Vraken moved between Lauren and the security team. His glow patterns flashed in a way that Lauren had learned meant protection. The other adults stood up too. They formed a half circle around Lauren. They were not attacking, but they were making their position clear. They would not let anyone take her. The security team gripped their weapons tighter. Fingers moved to triggers. The situation was about to turn deadly. Lauren jumped up quickly. She put herself between the two groups. Nova fell out of her lap but quickly recovered and stood beside her, chirping with alarm. Lauren pulled out her translation device. She made it flash a pattern that meant peace and safety. The Vraken responded immediately. Their aggressive patterns changed to calm ones. They did not move away from Lauren, but they stopped looking like they were about to attack. Hammond watched this happen. His expression changed from anger to shock to something like wonder. He asked Lauren what she had just done. How had she made them calm down? How was she talking to them? Lauren took a deep breath and started to explain. For the next hour, Lauren showed Hammond everything she had learned. She demonstrated the communication system. She showed him her research notes. She explained how the Vraken were not mindless beasts. They were intelligent. They had language. They had feelings and thoughts and social structures. She told him the whole story. How she found Nova hurt and trapped. How she helped the baby and fed it. How the pack came and accepted her. How they had been living together and learning from each other. She showed him weeks of careful observations and data. Hammond listened to all of it. He looked at the Vraken with new eyes. He watched how they moved, how they communicated with their glow patterns, how they interacted with Lauren with obvious trust and even affection. He was a military man, not a scientist, but he could see that something remarkable was happening here. Finally, Hammond made a decision. He contacted the fleet headquarters immediately. He told them that they had made first contact with an intelligent alien species. He requested immediate support from the Xenology department. He asked for more scientists and resources. This was too important to keep quiet. The response from headquarters was fast. Within 3 days, ships started arriving. Scientists came from all over this sector of space. Everyone wanted to observe and study. But they quickly learned that the Vraken would not tolerate being treated like lab animals. Any scientist who approached without respect got clear warning displays from the pack. Lauren became the bridge between the two species. She was the only human the pack fully trusted. She had to approve every person who wanted to come close. She had to teach the new scientists how to approach the Vraken properly, how to read their signals, how to show respect. With Sage's help, Lauren built a better translation system. It was not perfect. There were still many things the two species could not communicate. But it was enough for basic understanding, and what they learned changed everything. The Vraken had their own name for themselves. They called themselves the Illuminated Ones. The name came from their ability to make light. They did not think of it as just communication. To them, the light was art, it was history, it was poetry. Their glow patterns could tell stories that had been passed down for hundreds of generations. They had culture. They had traditions. In the crystal forests, they created temporary light sculptures that were more beautiful than anything humans had made. These sculptures told stories of their history. Stories of great hunts. Stories of lost loved ones. Stories of joy and sorrow and hope. The scientists realized they had made a terrible mistake. For years, humans and other spacefaring species had treated the Vraken as animals. They had shot at them. They had driven them from their lands. They had never tried to communicate. They had never shown any kindness or respect. Of course, the Vraken had fought back. Of course, they had been hostile. Every encounter with other species had started with aggression. Ships entering their space without permission. Colonies built on their hunting grounds. Hunters coming for trophy kills. The Vraken had only been defending themselves and their families. Lauren had done something simple but profound. She had helped a baby in pain. She had shared food with no expectation of reward. She had treated the Vraken as beings worthy of kindness and respect. And they had responded with trust and acceptance. They had claimed her as family because she had shown them the most basic form of decency. The news spread through the galaxy. The military classification of the Vraken changed immediately. They were no longer listed as dangerous animals. They were recognized as a sentient civilization. All the territories marked for human colonization were redesignated as protected cultural zones. Trade talks began. The Vraken had much to offer. Their crystal forests produced unique formations that had applications in technology. They knew about medicinal plants that could cure diseases humans had been fighting for decades. In exchange, they wanted technology and knowledge. They wanted to learn about the galaxy beyond their world. 6 months after Lauren found Nova in the crystal rocks, the first official embassy opened. It was built at the edge of the forest where Lauren had her workstation. The building was designed by both humans and Vraken working together. It had spaces for both species. It had translation systems built into the walls. No one was surprised when Lauren was named as the first human ambassador to the Illuminated Ones. She knew their language better than anyone. She understood their culture. Most importantly, she had their trust. And trust, everyone was learning, was the foundation of everything. But despite her new official position, Lauren never left her pack. She continued to live among them. She learned their ways as they learned hers. Nova grew bigger and stronger, but the bond they formed that first night never weakened. The young Vraken would still curl up next to Lauren every evening, glow patterns pulsing with contentment. And every night, surrounded by her pack under 3 moons, Lauren thought about that moment when she heard a small cry of pain and chose to help instead of walk away. That one choice had changed her life. It had changed the future of 2 species. It had proven that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is show kindness to someone who is afraid. The embassy became a place of constant activity and discovery. Every day brought new understanding between humans and the Illuminated Ones. But the most important work was not happening in meetings or laboratories. It was happening in the daily lives of those who chose to build bridges between the 2 species. Lauren watched as more humans followed her example. A young engineer named Kate befriended a different pack that lived near the Southern Research Station. Kate had been repairing a water collector when she noticed a young Vraken watching her work. Instead of chasing it away, she showed the curious creature what she was doing. Soon the whole pack was helping her identify underground water sources using their superior senses. A medical doctor named Paul started treating injured Vraken who came to the embassy. At first, he only saw wounds from accidents or fights with other predators. But as trust grew, Vraken began bringing their sick and elderly to him. Paul learned their biology. He developed medicines that worked for their unique chemistry. The Vraken, in turn, showed him plants from the forest that had powerful healing properties humans had never discovered. The success stories spread. Within a year, small communities of humans were living alongside Vraken packs across the planet. Each community developed its own unique relationship. Some focused on agriculture, learning which crops grew best with Vraken help. Others studied the crystal forest together, discovering that the formations were actually living organisms that the Vraken had been protecting for generations. But not everything was smooth. There were misunderstandings. There were accidents. Once a young human child got too close to a Vraken nest during breeding season. The protective parents nearly attacked before Lauren arrived and calmed everyone down. After that, both species worked together to create clear guidelines about boundaries and sensitive times. There was also resistance from some humans who could not accept the Fraken as equals. A group of colonists from a nearby system arrived wanting to settle land that belonged to a Vraken territory. They refused to accept the new classifications. They said the land was wasted on animals. They tried to build there anyway. The local Vraken pack responded with clear warnings. They created intimidating light displays. They surrounded the construction equipment, but they did not attack. They had learned from Lauren and others that humans could be reasoned with. They waited for the proper authorities to intervene. Hammond, now promoted to regional commander, arrived with security forces. He ordered the colonists to leave immediately. When they protested, he showed them recordings of Vraken art and culture. He showed them evidence of complex mathematics in their architecture. He made it clear that anyone who violated Vraken territory would face serious criminal charges. The colonists left, angry but compliant. The incident became famous throughout human space. It sent a clear message. The days of treating inhabited worlds as empty territory were over. Sentient beings had rights, regardless of how different they seemed from humans. Meanwhile, the cultural exchange deepened. Vraken artists began creating light sculptures specifically for human audiences. They learned what humans found beautiful and incorporated those elements. Human artists tried to learn the Vraken style, though they had to use technology rather than their own bodies to create the light patterns. The first joint art exhibition was held at the embassy. Humans came from across the sector to see it. They watched in wonder as Vraken created flowing patterns of light that told stories older than human space travel. They saw sculptures that captured emotions so perfectly that many viewers cried. The exhibition proved that beauty and meaning could transcend species barriers. Nova grew into a strong adult during this time. The young Vraken that Lauren had saved was now almost as big as titanium. But despite the size and strength, Nova remained gentle with Lauren. Every evening, without fail, Nova would find Lauren and settle beside her. The bond they shared was famous now. Children across human space learned about the scientist and the Vraken cub in their schools. Lauren's original pack became something like ambassadors themselves. They were patient with new humans who came to learn. They demonstrated their culture willingly. Sage, in particular, seemed to enjoy teaching. The wise Vraken spent hours helping human linguists understand the nuances of lightspeak. She corrected their attempts with patience that surprised everyone. Titanium took on a different role. He worked with human security forces to establish protocols for safety. He showed them how to read Vraken body language. He taught them the difference between a warning display and an actual threat. He helped create a system where both species could feel safe around each other. Swift became a guide for human explorers. The fast Vraken knew the crystal forests better than anyone. She led scientific expeditions to discover new species of plants and understand the ecosystem. She showed humans secret places of great beauty, waterfalls that glowed with bioluminescent algae, caves filled with singing crystals that resonated with specific frequencies. The relationship between species evolved in ways no one had predicted. Vraken began visiting human settlements out of curiosity. They wanted to see human technology. They wanted to taste human food, though most of it disagreed with their digestion. They wanted to understand how humans lived when they were not in the forest. Humans, in turn, were invited to join Vraken hunts, not to kill but to observe and participate in the strategy. They learned that Vraken hunts were not mindless violence. They were carefully planned operations that showed respect for the prey. The Vraken took only what they needed. They used every part of what they killed. They thanked the spirits of the animals they hunted. Religious and philosophical discussions began. The Vraken had their own beliefs about the universe and their place in it. They believed that all light came from the same source, that every being that could create or appreciate beauty was connected. Human philosophers found parallels with their own traditions. They discovered that questions about meaning and purpose were universal. Children of both species began playing together. Young Vraken would chase human children in games of tag. Human children would try to mimic the light patterns, using flashlights and colored filters. The games were clumsy at first, with many misunderstandings. But children were more flexible than adults. They adapted quickly to each other's ways. Scientists began studying the long-term effects of this cooperation. They documented improved mental health among humans who lived near Vraken packs. The presence of the illuminated ones seemed to reduce stress and anxiety. Their calm, rhythmic light patterns had a soothing effect on human nervous systems. The Vraken benefited too. Human medicine had saved many Vraken lives. Human technology helped them communicate over long distances, allowing separated packs to stay in contact. Human agriculture meant they no longer faced starvation during harsh seasons. The relationship was truly mutual. 2 years after Lauren found Nova, the Galactic Council officially recognized the Illuminated Ones as a member species. They were granted a seat at the council, and all the rights that came with it. The Vraken chose Sage to be their first representative. It was a natural choice. Sage had always been interested in understanding other species. Lauren accompanied Sage to the first council meeting. She watched with pride as the Vraken diplomat communicated through a sophisticated translation system. Sage spoke about the importance of approaching differences with curiosity rather than fear. She spoke about the value of patience and respect. She reminded the council that every species had wisdom to share if others would only listen. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. It became one of the most watched transmissions in history. Billions of beings from hundreds of species saw a Vraken, once thought to be a mindless beast, speaking with eloquence and wisdom about cooperation and peace. After the council meeting, Lauren and Sage returned to the Crystal Forest. They returned to the pack that had become family. Nova greeted them with excited chirps and bright flashing patterns. Titanium nodded his massive head in approval. Swift brought them a particularly beautiful crystal as a welcome home gift. That night, under 3 moons, the whole pack gathered for a celebration. They created a light sculpture together, all of them contributing their glow patterns. It told the story of a lost cub, a kind human, and the friendship that changed the galaxy. It was beautiful. It was true. And it reminded everyone that the smallest acts of kindness could have the biggest consequences. 5 years passed since the day Lauren found Nova trapped in the crystal rocks. The planet had transformed from a lonely research outpost into a thriving center of interspecies cooperation. More humans arrived each month, not as colonists claiming empty land, but as students wanting to learn from the Illuminated Ones. Universities from across human space established branches here. They taught courses in Vraken culture, language, and philosophy. Young humans studied alongside young Vraken, learning from each other. The first generation of truly bilingual individuals was growing up, equally comfortable with human speech and light patterns. Lauren's work had evolved beyond anyone's expectations. She was no longer just an ambassador. She had become the director of the Institute for Interspecies Understanding. Her research papers were required reading for anyone studying first contact protocols. Her methods, which she always insisted were just basic kindness and respect, had been adopted across the galaxy. The phenomenon became known officially as the Mitchell approach. But Lauren hated that name. She always told people it was not about her. It was about recognizing that intelligence and consciousness came in many forms. It was about putting aside fear and prejudice to see the individual behind the differences. The success with the Vraken inspired similar efforts elsewhere. On distant worlds, humans and other species began approaching previously hostile aliens with patience and respect instead of weapons. Not every attempt succeeded. Some species truly were incompatible with others due to biology or fundamental differences in thinking. But many former enemies became friends once communication was established. Nova had fully matured into a magnificent adult Vraken. She was large and powerful, with glow patterns that were unusually bright and complex. Other Vraken often came to watch her create light sculptures. She had a talent for art that was rare even among her kind. But despite her fame and status, Nova never strayed far from Lauren. The bond between them had become legendary. Students traveled from across the galaxy just to observe them together. Scientists studied their relationship, trying to understand the deep connection that had formed. But what they found was simple. It was love. Not romantic love, but the deep familial love between individuals who had saved each other in fundamental ways. Lauren's original pack had grown over the years. Titanium had taken a mate and they had their own cubs now. Swift had become the fastest hunter on the planet, legendary even among other Vraken packs. Sage had retired from her position at the Galactic Council, but continued teaching at the Institute. All of them still gathered with Lauren regularly, maintaining the pack bonds that had formed that first morning. On the 5th anniversary of first contact, a grand celebration was planned. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy were invited. The Galactic Council had declared it Interspecies Harmony Day. The main event would be held in the Crystal Forest, at the exact spot where Lauren had found Nova. Thousands attended. Humans, Vraken, and dozens of other species gathered in the forest. Translation devices allowed everyone to communicate. Food from 100 worlds was shared. Music and light sculptures filled the air. It was chaotic and beautiful and unlike anything that had happened before in galactic history. Lauren was asked to give a speech. She stood on a natural stage formed by crystal formations, looking out at the diverse crowd. Nova stood beside her, as always. Lauren spoke simply the way she always did. She told the story one more time. How she heard a cry for help. How she chose to respond with kindness. How that simple choice had changed everything. She talked about the moment the pack accepted her. How she realized that family was not about biology or species. It was about who you chose to protect, to care for, to stand beside. She spoke about Nova growing up and the joy of watching someone you helped become strong and confident and happy. Then she said something that would be quoted for generations. She said that every person had the power to change the galaxy, not through grand gestures or heroic actions, though those had their place, but through small, everyday choices to be kind rather than cruel, to be curious rather than fearful, to see the person rather than the difference. When she finished, Nova created a light sculpture. It was the most complex and beautiful pattern the young Vraken had ever made. It showed the story from her perspective. The pain of being trapped. The fear when a strange creature approached. The moment when fear turned to trust. The growing love and security of being part of a pack that included this odd, gentle human. The sculpture brought many to tears. It was so honest and emotional that even species who normally did not cry found themselves affected. It reminded everyone that beneath all the physical differences, sentient beings shared the same basic needs. Safety, family, love, purpose, understanding. After the ceremony, Lauren walked through the forest with her pack. They moved away from the crowds to a quiet place they had claimed as their own years ago. A small clearing where the crystal formations created a natural shelter. This was where they came when they needed peace. They settled into their usual positions. Nova curled against Lauren's side. Sage lay nearby, her glow patterns pulsing with contentment. Titanium took his protective position at the edge of the clearing. Swift brought fresh water from a nearby stream. The cubs, curious and playful, tumbled around them all. Lauren looked around at her family. They were so different from her in almost every way. Different bodies, different languages, different instincts and needs. But none of that mattered. They were pack. They were family. They belonged together. She thought about all the changes that had happened. The embassy, the institute, the students and scientists, the trade agreements and cultural exchanges, the seats at the Galactic Council. All of it had started with one moment, one choice, one act of simple kindness toward a creature in pain. Lauren often wondered what would have happened if she had followed protocol that day. If she had walked away from the crying sound. If she had left Nova trapped and alone, the Vraken would still be classified as monsters. Humans would still be settling on their lands. The two species would still be enemies. All that potential for friendship and cooperation would have been lost. But she had not walked away. She had stopped. She had listened. She had helped. And because of that, everything was different. Not perfect, because nothing ever was. There were still problems to solve, misunderstandings to clear up, prejudices to overcome. But there was also hope. There was friendship. There was proof that different species could not just coexist but truly thrive together. Nova shifted against her side, making that soft, purring sound that Lauren had first heard 5 years ago. Lauren stroked the Vraken's fur, feeling the warmth and the gentle vibrations. She thought about the scared, hurt baby she had found, and she looked at the strong, talented, beloved adult that baby had become. This was the real reward for everything she had done. Not the fame or the awards or the institute named after her. It was this. These quiet moments with her pack. The absolute trust and love they shared. The knowledge that she had been accepted by beings who owed her nothing but gave her everything. As the 3 moons rose over the crystal forest, the pack settled in for the night. their glow patterns synchronized, pulsing in harmony. It was a sight Lauren never tired of. A visual representation of their connection. A family of different species, different origins, different natures, all linked by choice and love. Lauren closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of the forest, the gentle humming of the crystals, the soft breathing of her pack, the distant calls of other creatures going about their lives. This was home. Not Earth, where she had been born, not the research station where she worked, but here in this clearing, surrounded by beings who had claimed her as one of their own. She had come to this planet as a scientist studying alien life. She had expected to spend her time collecting data and writing reports. She had never imagined she would find a family. She had never dreamed that one small act of compassion would ripple outward to touch the entire galaxy. But that was the thing about kindness. You never knew where it would lead. You never knew whose life you might change. You never knew what doors might open because you chose to help instead of hurt, to understand instead of fear, to love instead of hate. Lauren had shared a meal with a predator cub. By morning, the pack had claimed her as one of their own, and in doing so, they had all claimed a future that no one had thought possible. A future where different beings could look past their differences and see each other, really see each other, and recognize that beneath it all, they were not so different after all. That was the real lesson. That was the truth that would echo through the ages. Every person, regardless of species or origin, had the capacity for kindness. And kindness, more than any weapon or technology, had the power to change worlds.
Galactic University's advanced xenobiology course had earned itself quite the reputation over the years. Not the good kind of reputation, mind you, the kind that made insurance companies weep and parents reconsider their offspring's career choices. Professor Ketmori had been teaching the course for 32 standard cycles, and in that time, the crystalline being had developed what could charitably be called unconventional pedagogical methods, what others called a thinly veiled death wish with academic credentials. Jackson slouched in the back row of Lecture Hall Delta 9, his feet propped up on the seat in front of him, completely absorbed in his datapad. The human exchange student had managed to sleep through the first 20 minutes of class, a feat made even more impressive by the fact that Ketmori's voice sounded like wind chimes having an argument with a synthesizer. Around him, the usual collection of galactic academic hopefuls fidgeted in their various ways. Bryn's gills fluttered nervously, Grex's chitinous plates clicked in agitation, and Yuki's tail twitched with barely contained anxiety. They all knew what day it was. Jackson, apparently, did not. "Attention, my delightfully naive students," Professor Ketmori announced, their 6 crystalline limbs glinting under the harsh lecture hall lights. The professor's voice carried that particular tone that educators reserved for moments when they were about to traumatize their pupils in the name of science. Today marks our midterm practical examination. A collective shiver ran through the assembled students. Well, through everyone except Jackson, who was currently engrossed in what appeared to be a heated debate about optimal pizza toppings on the university forums. The boy had priorities, apparently, and academic survival wasn't one of them. Ketamori's primary manipulator limb gestured toward a reinforced container that had been wheeled into the lecture hall during Jackson's impromptu nap. The thing was roughly the size of a small hover car and bore warning labels in 14 different galactic languages. Most of them boiled down to variations of danger, contents extremely hostile, and unauthorized opening will result in immediate death and/or dismemberment. Jackson glanced up from his datapad just long enough to notice the box, shrugged, and returned to his very important discussion about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Spoiler alert, according to his current post, it absolutely did, and anyone who disagreed could fight him in the quad. "Now then," the professor continued, their tone taking on the cheerful quality of someone about to watch natural selection in action. Who among you can tell me the primary characteristics of the Nexian shadow cub? Bryn's webbed hand shot up so fast, she nearly launched herself from her seat. They're nocturnal ambush predators, Professor. Native to the shadow forests of Nexus Prime. Extremely territorial, highly aggressive, and, her voice cracked slightly, and they can smell fear from half a kilometer away. Excellent, Bryn. And their hunting methodology? This time it was Grex who answered, his voice a nervous chittering symphony. Pack hunters, Professor. They use coordinated attacks to isolate prey. Their tentacle whiskers can detect bioelectrical signatures, making hiding virtually impossible. And their claws can slice through reinforced steel plating. Ketmori's crystalline form practically sparkled with approval. Outstanding! And tell me, class, what makes them particularly suitable for today's examination? The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happened right before very bad things occurred. It was the silence of prey animals realizing they were about to become educational aids. Every student in the room, except for one oblivious human in the back row, began calculating the distance to the nearest exit. Jackson, meanwhile, had moved on from pizza toppings to complaining about the university's Wi-Fi speed. His fingers tapped away at his datapad with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea he was about to become part of a very dangerous lesson plan. The Shadow Cubs, Professor Ketmori announced with theatrical flair, are considered one of the most efficient predators in this quadrant of the galaxy. They are fast, intelligent, utterly ruthless, and, most importantly for our purposes today, they are young enough to still possess their natural hunting instincts without the wisdom that comes with age. The professor's 6 limbs moved in a complex pattern that somehow managed to convey both academic enthusiasm and barely contained sadistic glee. Today, you will be demonstrating your understanding of predator-prey dynamics through direct observation and, how shall I put this, immersive experience. That was when the screaming started. Well, not actual screaming. That would come later. This was more of a collective intake of breath that sounded remarkably like a small atmospheric breach. Students began frantically looking around the lecture hall, mentally cataloging potential hiding spots, escape routes, and last will and testament compositions. Yuki's feline features had gone pale beneath her fur. Professor, surely you don't mean... Oh, but I do. Ketmori's voice carried the kind of enthusiasm typically reserved for birthday parties and public executions. 3 juvenile shadow cubs, approximately 6 months old. Old enough to hunt, young enough to be properly motivated by hunger. I may have forgotten to feed them this morning. Academic oversight, you understand. Jackson finally looked up from his datapad, but only because someone's panicked breathing was interfering with his concentration. He glanced around the lecture hall with the mild irritation of someone whose very important internet browsing had been interrupted by what appeared to be a collective anxiety attack. "What's everyone so worked up about?" he asked, his tone suggesting that mass panic was a significant overreaction to what was obviously just another boring lecture. "It's just some kind of practical exam, right?" The looks he received in response could have powered a small star. Bryn's eyes were wide enough to serve as satellite dishes. Grex had begun unconsciously backing toward the wall, his multiple limbs twitching in what could charitably be called pre-flight preparation. Even Yuki, who belonged to a species that had evolved from apex predators, looked like she was reconsidering her life choices. "Jackson," Bryn whispered, her voice carrying the kind of urgency typically reserved for impending natural disasters. "Shadow cubs are..." But Professor Ketmori, had already moved to the containment unit. The professor's manipulator limbs worked at the locking mechanisms with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this many, many times before. Each click of a disengaging lock echoed through the lecture hall like a countdown to catastrophe. "Now, class, observe carefully," the professor announced. "Notice how your heart rates have increased. Notice the biochemical changes occurring in your various physiologies. This is the natural response of prey species when confronted with the prospect of encountering an apex predator. It's quite fascinating from an academic standpoint." Jackson blinked slowly, processing this information with all the urgency of someone trying to remember where they'd left their keys. "Wait, are you saying there are actual dangerous animals in that box?" The collective response was a sound that no single species should have been capable of making. A harmony of terror that somehow managed to blend gills, fluttering, chitin clicking, and what could only be described as existential feline despair. "Dangerous?" Professor Ketmori's crystalline laugh sounded like someone dropping a chandelier down a flight of stairs. "My dear Jackson, dangerous is such a limiting term. I prefer educationally challenging." The final lock disengaged with a click that seemed to echo in everyone's bones. The containment unit's door began to slide open with the slow, inevitable certainty of a really well-produced horror movie. A sound emerged from within, a sound that was part purr, part growl, and entirely designed by evolution to make intelligent beings question their life choices. "Remember, class," Professor Ketmori called out cheerfully, "the key to surviving this exercise is to demonstrate your understanding of predator psychology. Show fear, and they will hunt. Show aggression, and they will attack. Show intelligence, and you might live long enough to submit your final papers." The first shadow cub poked its head out of the containment unit. It was, Jackson had to admit, actually kind of cute. About the size of a large house cat, with sleek black fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and the kind of large amber eyes that suggested either profound wisdom or profound hunger, possibly both. The tentacle whiskers that extended from either side of its face swayed gently, giving it an almost playful appearance, right up until it opened its mouth and revealed teeth that could serve as industrial cutting tools. The second cub emerged, followed immediately by the third. They moved with the fluid grace of shadows given form, their heads turning in perfect synchronization as they scanned the lecture hall. Their tentacle whiskers twitched and swayed, clearly picking up the various bioelectrical signatures of the terrified students. Every alien in the room had the same thought. This was how they were going to die. Death by educational aid. Their obituaries would read like academic footnotes. Jackson, however, was squinting at the cubs with the critical eye of someone evaluating potential pets. They're actually prettier than the pictures in the textbook. The whiskers are kind of neat. And that was when something extraordinary happened. The three shadow cubs, who should have been spreading out to begin their coordinated hunt, who should have been stalking the terror-frozen students with predatory precision, who should have been demonstrating exactly why their species was feared across multiple star systems, turned and looked directly at Jackson, their amber eyes locked onto the human with laser-like focus. Their tentacle whiskers stopped their random swaying and oriented themselves toward the back row. And then, in perfect unison, all three cubs tilted their heads in an expression that could only be described as curiosity. Professor Ketmori's crystalline form went completely still. In 32 cycles of conducting this particular practical examination, this had never happened. The cubs were supposed to spread out, select the weakest-looking prey, and begin the hunt. They were not supposed to fixate on one student like he was the most interesting thing in the galaxy. Jackson, blissfully unaware that he had just broken several fundamental laws of predator behavior, waved casually at the cubs. "Hey there, guys. You're the practical exam, huh?" The response was immediate and completely unprecedented in the annals of xenobiological education. All three shadow cubs began walking directly toward Jackson. Not stalking, not prowling, not exhibiting any of the predatory behaviors that had been documented in thousands of research papers. Just walking, like they were going to see an old friend. The lecture hall erupted into chaos. Students scrambled for higher ground, diving under desks, climbing onto chairs, and generally demonstrating that intelligence and grace under pressure were not necessarily related concepts. Bryn managed to wedge herself behind a waste receptacle. Grex had somehow achieved what could only be called wall climbing, despite the complete absence of appropriate appendages. Yuki had leaped onto a desk and was balancing there with the desperate poise of someone whose evolutionary ancestry was showing. Through it all, Jackson remained seated, watching the approaching cubs with the mild interest of someone observing an unexpected, but not particularly concerning development. "Jackson!" Bryn's voice reached a pitch that could have shattered crystal. "Get out of there. They're coming right for you." Jackson looked down at the cubs, who were now less than 3 meters away and showing absolutely no signs of predatory aggression. If anything, they looked hopeful. Their amber eyes were bright. Their tentacle whiskers were swaying in what seemed like excitement rather than threat assessment. And one of them had begun making a sound that was distinctly more purr than growl. "I think they like me," Jackson announced, his tone suggesting that this was both obvious and unremarkable. Professor Ketmori's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through butter. "That is impossible. Shadow cubs are apex predators. They do not like prey species. They hunt them." Jackson shrugged, apparently unbothered by the professor's denial of what was happening right in front of everyone's eyes. Maybe nobody told them that. And then the first cub reached his chair. What happened next would be talked about in xenobiology circles for decades to come. What happened next would require the complete rewriting of at least 6 textbooks and the hasty revision of approximately 43 research papers. What happened next would cause 3 different species to question everything they thought they knew about predator-prey relationships. What happened next was that the first shadow cub looked up at Jackson with those luminous amber eyes, opened its mouth to reveal a set of teeth that could cut through starship hull plating, and purred. Not the threatening rumble of a predator sizing up its next meal. Not the warning growl of a creature establishing territorial dominance. A purr. The kind of sound that suggested contentment, affection, and a deep-seated desire for belly rubs. Jackson blinked down at the cub with the expression of someone who had just discovered that his morning coffee tasted slightly different, but couldn't quite figure out why. "Well, hello there, little guy. You're friendly, aren't you?" The cub's response was to rub against Jackson's leg with the enthusiasm of a house cat greeting its favorite human after a long day at work. The tentacle whiskers that should have been analyzing Jackson's bioelectrical signature for optimal attack vectors were instead gently brushing against his shin in what could only be described as affectionate nuzzling. From her hiding spot behind the waste receptacle, Bryn's voice reached a frequency that probably violated several noise ordinances. "Jackson, those are not pets. They are evolutionary killing machines." "Huh," Jackson replied, reaching down to scratch behind the cub's ears. The creature immediately leaned into the touch, its purring increasing to a volume that could probably be heard in the next lecture hall. could have fooled me. This one seems pretty chill." Professor Ketmori's crystalline form had gone completely rigid, every facet reflecting light in patterns that suggested profound academic distress. In 32 cycles of teaching, the professor had seen students frozen in terror, students attempting futile escape, students fainting from sheer panic, and on one memorable occasion, a student who had tried to reason with the cubs using interpretive dance. But this was unprecedented. The second shadow cub had reached Jackson's chair and was currently attempting to climb into his lap. Its claws, which were designed to slice through reinforced armor plating, carefully retracted as it scrambled up his leg with the determined enthusiasm of a kitten seeking the perfect napping spot. "Okay, you're definitely friendly," Jackson observed, helping the cub settle across his thighs. The creature immediately began kneading his legs with its paws, claws safely sheathed, purring with such intensity that his datapad began vibrating in harmonic resonance. The third cub, not to be outdone by its siblings, had positioned itself against Jackson's other leg and was gazing up at him with an expression that could only be described as adoring. Its tentacle whiskers swayed gently, occasionally reaching up to brush against his free hand in what was unmistakably a request for attention. "This is impossible," Professor Ketmori whispered, their voice carrying the kind of existential crisis typically reserved for the moment when one's entire worldview collapses into rubble. "This violates every known principle of xenobiology. They should be hunting. They should be establishing pack dynamics. They should be demonstrating the predatory behaviors that have made their species feared across half the galaxy." Jackson looked up from the two cubs who were now competing for prime lap real estate. "Maybe they're just not hungry? You said you forgot to feed them, but maybe someone else did?" "I specifically ensured they had not been fed for 18 hours, the professor protested, their crystalline limbs flailing in academic distress. "They should be ravenous. They should see you as the most convenient source of protein in this room." "Well, they're definitely seeing me as something," Jackson replied, gently disentangling one cub's tentacle whisker from his shirt buttons. "But I'm pretty sure it's not dinner." From various hiding spots around the lecture hall, the other students watched in fascination and terror as Jackson became the center of what could only be described as an interspecies cuddle session. The shadow cubs had arranged themselves around him like he was their personal heating unit, purring in harmonized contentment while occasionally nuzzling his hands or arms. Grex, who had somehow achieved a precarious perch on top of a storage cabinet, called down in a voice that cracked with strain. "Jackson, whatever you do not make any sudden movements. You might trigger their hunting response." Jackson glanced up at him with the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to a particularly slow child. "Grex, I don't think these guys have a hunting response, at least not for me. Watch this." Before anyone could stop him, before anyone could scream a warning or faint from horror, or file the appropriate paperwork for witnessing a fellow student's voluntary suicide, Jackson stood up. The collective intake of breath from the hidden students could have powered a small atmospheric processor. This was it. This was the moment when the cubs would finally reveal their true nature. This was when Jackson would discover that apex predators did not, in fact, appreciate being disturbed during what he had apparently mistaken for social bonding time. The shadow cubs looked up at him with mild curiosity, as if wondering why their new favorite person had decided to relocate. Then, with the fluid grace that made their species such effective hunters, they repositioned themselves around his legs and resumed their contented purring. One of them began rubbing against his knee with the kind of affection typically reserved for beloved family members. "See?" Jackson said, gesturing to his entourage of supposedly deadly predators. "Totally friendly. I think someone's been exaggerating their reputation." Professor Ketmory's voice rose to a pitch that suggested their entire academic career was flashing before their crystalline eyes. "Their reputation is based on documented evidence spanning 3 centuries. These creatures have been responsible for the deaths of trained hunters, experienced xenobiologists, and an entire research expedition on Nexus Prime." Jackson shrugged, apparently unmoved by this recitation of the cub's impressive resume. "Maybe those people just didn't know how to approach them properly. You know, like dogs. If you're nervous around them, they pick up on it and act differently." "These are not dogs," the professor shrieked, their voice climbing to frequencies that probably violated several galactic communications regulations. "These are apex predators from a Class X death world. They do not require proper approach techniques. They require proper funeral arrangements." But even as the professor protested, Jackson was proving his point through practical demonstration. He had begun walking around the lecture hall, and the 3 shadow cubs were following him like he was the most fascinating thing they had ever encountered. Their tentacle whiskers swayed with what could only be described as happiness, and their amber eyes tracked his every movement with devoted attention. It was Yuki who finally voiced what everyone was thinking, or rather, what everyone was desperately trying not to think. "Professor," she called from her perch on a desk, her feline features showing an expression that suggested she was questioning everything she thought she knew about predator behavior. What if Jackson is right? What if they're just friendly? The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurred when fundamental assumptions about the universe were suddenly called into question. It was the silence of paradigms shifting, worldviews crumbling, and textbooks becoming obsolete in real time. Professor Ketmory's crystalline form went through a series of color changes that probably indicated something between academic excitement and complete mental breakdown. If these cubs are exhibiting non-aggressive behavior toward a potential prey species, the professor said slowly, as if working through the implications in real time, then we may be witnessing something that requires immediate documentation, analysis, and probably several emergency conferences with the Galactic Academy of Sciences. Jackson, meanwhile, had settled back into his chair with his 3 new companions, arranging themselves around him like he was their personal furniture. One cub had claimed his lap, another had positioned itself against his leg, and the third was attempting to figure out the optimal way to balance on the arm of his chair. "Does this mean I pass the practical exam?" he asked, scratching behind the ears of the cub in his lap. The creature's purring intensified to a level that was probably registering on seismic equipment in the adjacent buildings. The professor's response was a sound that no crystalline being should have been capable of making. Something between a laugh, a sob, and the noise a computer makes when it's trying to process impossible data. From around the lecture hall, students began cautiously emerging from their hiding spots. Bryn crept out from behind the waste receptacle, her gills fluttering with nervous curiosity. Grex managed to descend from his cabinet perch with only minimal dignity loss. Yuki leaped down from her desk with feline grace, though she maintained a respectful distance from the unprecedented scene. They all stood in a loose circle around Jackson and his entourage, watching as 3 of the galaxy's most feared predators competed for the attention of an oblivious human who was treating them like oversized house cats. "This is going to require so much paperwork," Professor Ketmory whispered, their voice carrying the exhaustion of someone whose entire understanding of the universe had just been turned upside down. "So very, very much paperwork." Jackson looked up from the cub that was now attempting to groom his hair with its sandpaper tongue. Paperwork for what? For rewriting everything we thought we knew about interspecies predator dynamics, the professor replied, already mentally composing the first of what would undoubtedly be many, many reports. For explaining to the university administration why my practical examination turned into an impromptu xenobiology revolution. For figuring out how a human exchange student managed to domesticate 3 shadow cubs in the span of 15 minutes. Domesticate? Jackson blinked, apparently processing this term for the first time. I wouldn't say I domesticated them. We're just hanging out. The cub in his lap chose that moment to look up at him with an expression of such pure adoration that it could have melted the hearts of spacefaring pirates. Its tentacle whiskers brushed against his face in what was unmistakably an affectionate gesture, and it began purring with such intensity that Jackson's shirt began vibrating. "Right," Professor Ketmori said flatly, their tone suggesting they had reached the acceptance stage of academic grief. "Just hanging out with apex predators, who should, by all known laws of nature, be using your internal organs as chew toys." Jackson shrugged, apparently seeing nothing unusual about this situation. Maybe the laws of nature need an update. And that, as it turned out, was exactly what was about to happen. Within minutes of Professor Ketmori's frantic communications to the university administration, Lecture Hall Delta 9 had transformed from a site of academic instruction into something resembling a cross between a scientific research facility and a 3-ring circus. The first to arrive was Dr. Emmett, head of the xenobiology department, who burst through the doors with the kind of urgency typically reserved for natural disasters or budget meetings. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw Jackson casually reading his datapad while 3 shadow cubs used him as a combination furniture set and grooming station. "Sweet, merciful black holes," Dr. Emmett whispered, his voice carrying the reverent tone of someone witnessing a miracle. Or a catastrophe. Possibly both. "Ketmori, please tell me you have some kind of explanation for this." Professor Ketmori's crystalline form had settled into what could only be described as a state of academic shock. "I wish I did, Emmett. I truly wish I did. According to every piece of research we have on shadow cub behavior, that human should be experiencing rapid conversion from living being to nutritional supplement. And yet," Dr. Emmett observed, watching as one of the cubs gently licked Jackson's hand with the kind of affection typically reserved for packmates, "he appears to be experiencing something closer to adoption." Jackson glanced up from his datapad, where he had apparently moved on to reviewing his class schedule for the next semester. "Hey, Dr. Emmett, these your pets? They're pretty cool, but someone should probably warn people that they're super affectionate. I've been getting weird looks from the other students." Dr. Emmett's response was a sound that existed somewhere between laughter and the noise a starship makes when its engines are failing. "Jackson, those are not pets. Those are apex predators that have been documented killing creatures 3 times your size." "Huh?" Jackson looked down at the cub that was currently using his leg as a pillow. "This one's been trying to groom my hair for the past 10 minutes. If that's how they kill things, they're really bad at it." Within the hour, the lecture hall had become a hub of scientific activity that would have made the Galactic Academy of Sciences weep with envy. Equipment had been wheeled in from at least 6 different departments: xenobiology, behavioral psychology, evolutionary analysis, chemical composition, bioelectric field measurement, and something called emergency containment protocol implementation that nobody really wanted to think about too closely. The problem, it quickly became apparent, was that nobody wanted to get close enough to actually conduct any meaningful research. "We need to take biological readings," announced Dr. Petra, the university's leading expert on predator psychology, from what she considered a safe distance of approximately 15 meters. But standard protocol requires proximity sensors placed within 2 meters of the subjects. "You're welcome to place them yourself," Professor Ketmori replied, with the kind of politeness that suggested they had no intention of getting any closer to the cubs than absolutely necessary. Dr. Petra's response was to produce a remote-controlled drone equipped with enough scanning equipment to analyze the molecular composition of a small moon. "I think we can manage this from a distance." Jackson watched with mild amusement as the drone approached, its sensors whirring and clicking with mechanical precision. The shadow cubs looked up at the approaching device with the kind of curiosity that house cats typically reserved for new toys. One of them reached out with a tentacle whisker and gently batted at the drone's sensor array. "Fascinating," Dr. Petra murmured, studying her readings from behind the safety of a reinforced observation barrier that had been hastily erected around the perimeter of the hall. Their stress indicators are at baseline levels: heart rate, respiration, bioelectrical activity, all within normal parameters for a relaxed state. Relaxed, Dr. Emmett's voice climbed an octave. They're apex predators in the presence of potential prey. They should be in full hunting mode. And yet, Dr. Petra continued, her instruments painting a picture that defied everything they thought they knew about shadow cub behavior. They're exhibiting classic pack bonding indicators. See how they position themselves around Jackson? That's protective clustering. They're treating him like a pack member. Professor Ketmori's crystalline form shifted through several color spectrums that probably indicated severe academic distress. Pack bonding requires extended social interaction over a period of weeks or months. These cubs met Jackson approximately 1 hour ago. "Maybe they're just really efficient socializers," Jackson suggested, gently disentangling a cub's tentacle whisker from his shirt pocket. The creature had been systematically exploring his clothing with the thoroughness of a security inspection, apparently fascinated by the concept of pockets. Dr. Emmett began pacing with the kind of nervous energy that suggested his entire understanding of xenobiology was crumbling in real time. There has to be an explanation. Predator behavior doesn't just change. There are evolutionary imperatives at work here. Millions of years of genetic programming don't get overridden by casual friendliness. That was when Dr. Helena from the Chemical Analysis Department made an announcement that would change everything. "I'm reading some very interesting pheromone signatures," she called out from behind her array of atmospheric analyzers. "The human is producing a complex cocktail of chemical compounds that I've never seen before." "Chemical compounds?" Professor Ketmori's attention snapped to her with laser-like focus. "What kind of chemical compounds?" Dr. Helena's equipment beeped and whirred as it processed atmospheric samples with the precision of a master chef analyzing a complex recipe. "Well, that's the fascinating part. The compounds themselves aren't unusual. They're standard human pheromones related to calm emotional states, social bonding, and what appears to be parental affection." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurred when pieces of a cosmic puzzle suddenly clicked into place with the inevitability of a perfectly designed machine. Parental affection? Dr. Emmett's voice carried the tone of someone who was beginning to see the shape of something impossible. "Are you saying the cubs are reading Jackson's pheromone signature as maternal?" "That's impossible," Professor Ketmori protested, but their voice lacked its earlier conviction. Human pheromones should have no effect on Nexian shadow cubs. They're from completely different evolutionary trees, different planets, different biological systems entirely. Dr. Helena's equipment continued its analysis, producing readouts that seemed to defy several fundamental principles of biochemistry. Unless, she said slowly, the chemical signatures are similar enough to trigger a cross-species response. Let me run a comparison analysis. What happened next would require the emergency convening of 3 separate academic conferences and the hasty revision of the Galactic Encyclopedia of Interspecies Biology. "Oh," Dr. Helena whispered, staring at her readouts with the expression of someone who had just discovered that 2 + 2 actually equaled fish. "Oh my, this is remarkable." "What?" Dr. Emmett demanded, his patience finally reaching its breaking point. "What did you find?" Dr. Helena looked up from her instruments with the kind of expression typically reserved for religious experiences or severe head injuries. "The pheromone signature Jackson is producing. It's not just similar to Nexian shadow cub maternal indicators. It's nearly identical. And that's not the remarkable part." She gestured to her secondary analysis array, which was currently processing what appeared to be several dozen separate chemical breakdowns. "I ran the signature through the xenobiological database. Jackson's pheromone profile shows compatibility markers for approximately 68 different predator species from across the galaxy. The collective response was a sound that no single species should have been capable of producing. A harmony of scientific minds simultaneously reaching the same impossible conclusion. "You're saying," Professor Ketmori said carefully, "that this human is accidentally producing chemical signatures that convince multiple species of apex predators to treat him as a maternal figure." "Not just maternal," Dr. Helena corrected, her voice carrying the excitement of someone who had just made a discovery that would rewrite textbooks. "Pack leader, territory holder, and social bonding partner. Essentially, Jackson is broadcasting a chemical message that says, 'I am safe, I am family, and I will protect you,' to every predator in the immediate vicinity." Jackson looked up from the cub that was currently attempting to build a nest in his hair. "Is that why they're being so clingy? Because, honestly, it's kind of sweet, but I do have other classes today." Dr. Emmett turned to stare at his student with the expression of someone who had just realized that the mild-mannered exchange student sitting in his lecture halls was actually a walking, talking violation of everything they thought they knew about interspecies relationships. "Jackson," he said slowly, "have you ever noticed animals acting unusually around you before?" Jackson shrugged, apparently seeing this as a perfectly normal question. "I mean, yeah, dogs love me. Cats won't leave me alone. There was this one time on vacation when a whole pack of wild something or others followed me back to the hotel. But that's pretty normal, right? Animals just like some people better than others." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of several xenobiologists simultaneously reevaluating their entire understanding of human-animal interactions. "A pack of wild something or others," Professor Ketmori repeated flatly. "Yeah, they were kind of like big lizard cat things with too many teeth. Really friendly, though. The hotel staff seemed kind of freaked out about it." Jackson paused, considering. "Come to think of it, people seem to get really worried when animals like me. I always figured they were just jealous." Dr. Emmett slowly sat down in the nearest chair, his face cycling through approximately 15 different expressions, before settling on something that could only be described as the look of a man whose entire academic career has just been turned upside down by a student who thinks apex predators are friendly lizard cat things. "Jackson," he said carefully, "I think we need to have a very long conversation about your interaction history with local wildlife." But before Jackson could respond, Dr. Helena's equipment began producing a new series of readings that made her previous discoveries look mundane by comparison. "Oh no," she whispered, staring at her atmospheric analysis with growing alarm. "Oh no, no, no." "What now?" Dr. Emmett asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Dr. Helena looked up from her instruments with the expression of someone who had just realized they were standing at ground zero of a potentially galaxy-changing event. "Jackson's pheromone signature. It's not just affecting the shadow cubs. It's spreading through the atmospheric recycling system." She gestured to her readings with hands that were beginning to shake with what could have been excitement or terror. Every predator species currently housed in the university's xenobiology research facilities is showing elevated interest in this sector of the campus, and they're all heading this way. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The university's research facilities housed specimens from dozens of different worlds. Creatures that had been carefully contained and studied precisely because they were too dangerous for casual interaction. And all of them, apparently, were about to come calling on Jackson. "How long do we have?" Professor Ketmori asked, their crystalline form cycling through color patterns that suggested immediate panic. Dr. Helena checked her readings one more time, as if hoping the numbers would somehow change through force of will. "Based on the response time we've observed with the shadow cubs and the atmospheric distribution rate, maybe 20 minutes before the first arrivals." Jackson looked around at the assembled scientists with the expression of someone who was beginning to suspect that his day was about to become significantly more complicated than he had planned. "So," he said slowly, "should I cancel my afternoon classes?" What happened in the next 20 minutes would be discussed in academic circles for generations, debated in xenobiological conferences across the galaxy, and eventually lead to the establishment of an entirely new field of study called human-predator compatibility dynamics. It started with the Corvin frost wolves from the Arctic Studies Wing. They arrived first, padding through the corridors with the silent grace of creatures evolved to hunt in perpetual winter. Security footage would later show them bypassing 3 different containment protocols and somehow managing to operate a manual door release, skills that wolves from an ice planet should not have possessed. The frost wolves entered the lecture hall, took one look at Jackson, and promptly arranged themselves in a protective semicircle around his chair. Their pack leader, a magnificent specimen with ice-blue eyes and fangs designed for crushing frozen bone, approached Jackson with the cautious respect typically reserved for encountering a superior alpha. Jackson looked down at the wolf and said, "Well, aren't you gorgeous?" The wolf's response was to rest its massive head on Jackson's knee and emit a rumbling sound that was part growl, part purr, and entirely devoted. By the time the Altarian Razorhawks arrived, somehow having escaped their aerial containment facility, Jackson had accumulated what could only be described as a menagerie of death. The hawks, whose talons could slice through reinforced plasteel, landed on the backs of his chair and began preening his hair with the delicate care of professional stylists. The crystal serpents from Vega 3 slithered in next, their diamond-hard scales catching the lecture hall lights as they wound themselves around the chair legs like living jewelry. The venom dripping from their fangs could dissolve metal, but they seemed more interested in gently booping Jackson's ankles with their snouts. Professor Ketmori had given up on crystalline color changes and settled into a permanent state of academic catatonia. "This violates everything," the professor whispered. Everything we know about territorial boundaries, species compatibility, predator hierarchies. Maybe what we know is wrong, Dr. Emmett interrupted, watching as a pack of Taraxian shadow stalkers, creatures that had never been successfully domesticated by any species, began organizing themselves around Jackson's chair like they were planning the galaxy's most dangerous group hug. It was Chancellor Oren who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. The rock-based administrator had arrived to assess what his security team had described as a code-red biological containment breach, and instead found what looked like the universe's most unlikely petting zoo. "What exactly are we looking at here?" Chancellor Oren asked, his granite features showing the kind of confusion typically reserved for budget meetings that actually made sense. Dr. Helena looked up from her instruments, which were now producing readings that would require the invention of new scientific terminology. "We're looking at a complete paradigm shift in our understanding of interspecies relationships," she announced. "Humans don't just coexist with predator species. They accidentally domesticate them through evolutionary coincidence." Jackson, who now had 3 shadow cubs in his lap, 2 frost wolves at his feet, 4 razor hawks in his hair, and several crystal serpents draped around his shoulders like the galaxy's most dangerous scarf, looked up with the expression of someone who was starting to suspect that his exchange student experience might be slightly more complicated than advertised. "So," he said, gently untangling a serpent that had become fascinated with his shirt buttons, "does this mean I get extra credit?" The collective response was a sound that transcended species barriers, the universal noise of minds being comprehensively blown. And that was when Jackson stood up, carefully balancing his entourage of apex predators, and made an announcement that would echo through academic history. "I hate to break up the party, but I really do have galactic economics at 3, and Professor Hendricks gets cranky if we're late. Plus, I think these guys need some exercise." He began walking toward the door, followed by what could only be described as a parade of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, all of whom were treating him like he was their favorite person in the universe. As Jackson reached the doorway, he paused and looked back at the assembled scientists. "Oh, and Professor Ketmori? I think I'll take that passing grade on the practical exam." And with that, Jackson walked out of the lecture hall, trailed by enough lethal wildlife to conquer a small planet, heading off to his next class like this was just another Tuesday at Galactic University. Behind him, Professor Ketmori finally found their voice. "I'm going to need so much paperwork for this."
"6 miles under the Pacific, something knocked on the hull of a United States Navy station, and it was not being polite. Sonar technician Danny Ford dropped his coffee. Master Chief Frank Doyle did not even blink. "They picked the wrong ocean," he muttered, cracking his knuckles. Somewhere above them, a commander was already reaching for a phone he prayed he would never have to use. If you love a good underdog fight, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now let's dive into this journey, because 6 miles down, the aliens are about to learn why humans never explore the deep sea unarmed. Trident Station sat on the floor of the Mariana Trench like a steel tick clinging to the belly of the planet, humming quietly while the rest of the world slept above it. It was officially listed on Navy paperwork as an experimental deep-sea research and salvage outpost, and unofficially known by everyone stationed there as the Can, because living inside it for 6 months straight felt exactly like being sealed in one. Commander Jack Reynolds ran the place with the calm exhaustion of a man who had long since stopped being surprised by anything the ocean threw at him. He had survived typhoons, equipment failures, and one unforgettable week when the galley ran out of coffee, which nearly caused a mutiny. He liked his crew small, sharp, and a little bit strange, because normal people did not volunteer to live at the bottom of the sea. His sonar technician, Danny Ford, was 26 years old, sharp-eyed and permanently jittery from drinking more coffee than any human body was designed to process. His engineer, Pete Callahan, could fix almost anything with a wrench and a bad attitude. And then there was Master Chief Frank Doyle, a man built like a submarine hatch, who had been diving in hostile waters since before half the crew was born. Doyle did not talk much. When he did, people listened, mostly because he was terrifying and partly because he was usually right. The morning it all changed started like any other. Ford was watching the sonar display, half asleep, sipping his fourth cup of coffee, when a shape drifted across the return that should not have existed. It was smooth, symmetrical, and moving against the current, which meant it was not a whale, not a squid, and definitely not a rock formation. "Commander," Ford said, sitting up straight for the first time in an hour, "I've got something out there." "It's not marine life." Reynolds walked over, arms crossed, studying the blip crawling steadily closer. "Debris field, old sub-wreck?" "No, sir, it's moving on its own. And it's headed straight for us." Doyle appeared in the doorway without anyone hearing him come in, which he always seemed to manage despite being roughly the size of a small refrigerator. "Something's out there," he said flatly, "and it ain't Navy." Reynolds ordered the outer lights raised, and for a long, tense minute, nothing happened except the slow hiss of recycled air and the pounding of Ford's heart against his ribs. Then the object came into view outside the reinforced viewport, and every person in that room went completely silent. It was a probe, roughly the size of a delivery van, covered in strange plating that shimmered faintly even in the dim water, with 3 glowing sensor clusters that rotated slowly. Scanning the station from top to bottom like a curious tourist inspecting a museum exhibit. It made no attempt to communicate. It simply floated there, studying them. "That is not one of ours," Callahan said, stating the obvious with the particular tone of a man who desperately wished it wasn't true. Doyle stepped closer to the viewport, arms folded, watching the probe with the same expression he used when a rookie diver did something monumentally stupid. "Whatever that is," he said, "it thinks nobody's home down here." Reynolds keyed the comm to Pacific Fleet Command, requesting immediate identification on an unregistered object at their coordinates. The response took 11 minutes, an eternity when a hostile probe is parked outside your window, and when it finally came through, it offered no comfort at all. Nothing matching that description existed in any known inventory, allied or otherwise. That was when the probe extended a thin mechanical arm, pressed it against the station's outer hull, and began, very calmly, to cut through solid reinforced steel. Alarms tore through Trident Station, red light bathing every corridor, and for the first time in years, Jack Reynolds felt something he had almost forgotten the taste of: real fear. 6 miles beneath the surface, with nowhere to run and no one coming fast enough. Doyle grabbed the heaviest wrench off the tool rack like it was a butter knife. "Well," he said, cracking a small, dangerous grin, "guess it's time to say hello properly." Nobody in that station had any idea that this quiet, curious little probe was only the very first knock on the door, and that somewhere far above the waves. An entire alien fleet was about to learn a lesson the hard way about exactly what lived at the bottom of Earth's oceans. The cutting arm sliced halfway through the outer hull plate before Doyle reached it, and without a second of hesitation, he swung the wrench in a full arc and caved in the probe's sensor cluster like a tin can. Sparks sprayed through the water outside the viewport, and the mechanical arm jerked backward, retracting in what almost looked like surprise. "Report," Reynolds barked, watching pressure gauges climb toward levels nobody wanted to see. "Breach is minor, sir, we can patch it," Callahan shouted, already hauling a sealant kit toward the damaged section. But that thing wasn't just scanning us. It was trying to get inside. The wounded probe drifted backward, its remaining lights flickering erratically, then shot upward into the darkness and vanished. For a moment, everyone allowed themselves to believe the danger had passed. It had not. 20 minutes later, Ford's sonar display lit up with something far larger, far heavier, and moving with a discipline that told everyone in the room this was no accident and no coincidence. "Commander, I've got multiple contacts inbound, big ones in formation." Reynolds felt his stomach drop. "How many?" "I'm counting 6. No, wait, 8. They're spreading out around us." Doyle peered over Ford's shoulder at the display, jaw tightening. That's not recon anymore. That's a landing party. Within minutes, massive shapes settled onto the sea floor surrounding Trident Station in a loose ring. Each one deploying stabilizing legs that dug into the silt like a spider taking up position. Then, one by one, hatches opened, and armored figures began emerging into the crushing black water, moving with the strange, gliding confidence of creatures who clearly believed they had nothing left to fear. The lead figure activated a translation device, and a cold, buzzing voice filled the station's outer hull sensors, easily picked up by the internal comm array. Unidentified structure, you occupy Ithran-conquered salvage territory. This world's depths were surveyed as unclaimed. Submit your resources for immediate collection. Reynolds keyed the response channel, keeping his voice level despite his racing pulse. This is United States Navy installation Trident Station. You are trespassing on sovereign territorial waters. Withdraw immediately. There was a pause, then something that almost sounded like amusement crackled through the translation. Species designation confirmed as primitive surface dwellers. Surface dwellers do not possess deep ocean assets. Compliance is advised. Doyle leaned toward the comm, unable to help himself. Buddy, he said, you just parked your whole fleet on top of the U.S. Navy's front porch. The alien voice did not respond to that directly, but the armored figures outside began advancing toward the station's docking collar. Weapons igniting with a pale blue glow that lit up the black water like ghostly lanterns. Reynolds ordered general quarters, and the small crew scrambled into positions that had never once been tested against an actual enemy. Because nobody at Trident Station had ever expected to need them. Ford grabbed a sidearm with shaking hands. Callahan armed himself with a cutting torch because it was the closest thing resembling a weapon within reach. Doyle simply rolled his shoulders, grabbed a heavy dive spear gun off the wall rack, and walked toward the docking hatch like a man heading out for a stroll. The first alien breached the outer hatch, and Doyle put a spear clean through its shoulder plating before it took a second step. The creature staggered backward, letting out a sound the translator did not even attempt to convert, and collapsed against the bulkhead. They weren't expecting resistance, Callahan shouted over the chaos, torch blazing as he welded a support brace across the buckling inner door. Look at them, they're barely reacting. They've never fought anybody who lives down here, Doyle said, reloading the spear gun with brutal efficiency. That's about to change real quick. More armored figures pushed through the breach, and the corridor became a tight, brutal fight in cramped steel hallways where there was nowhere to retreat and no room for hesitation. Ford fired his sidearm with more panic than accuracy, but panic kept him alive, and that was enough for now. Reynolds coordinated from the command deck, sealing sections of the station to slow the advance while broadcasting an emergency distress signal up through the relay buoy to Pacific Fleet Command. The response came back fast this time, and it was the first genuinely good news anyone at Trident Station had heard all day. Trident Station, this is Pacific Fleet Command. We have your distress call. Reinforcements are already inbound. Hold position. Help is on the way. Reynolds allowed himself one short breath of relief before the docking collar groaned under a heavier impact and through the reinforced viewport. He saw something far larger surfacing from the alien formation outside. A shape built for one purpose only, and it was aiming directly at the heart of the station. The new alien shape was easily 3 times the size of the landing craft already surrounding Trident Station, its hull ridged with weapon ports that pulsed with slow, hungry light. A commanding figure emerged from it, wearing armor plated in gold trim that marked him apart from the rest, moving with the deliberate arrogance of someone who had never once lost a fight in his life. The translation device crackled again, this time carrying a voice sharper and colder than before. This is Fleet Marshal Threx of the Ithran-conquered. Your resistance has been noted and will be corrected. Surrender the installation, or it will be reduced to debris. Reynolds gripped the comm, jaw tight. Marshal, you've got a funny way of introducing yourself. This is United States sovereign territory, and we don't hand over Navy property to anybody. There was a pause, then something almost like genuine confusion filtered through the translated voice. Records indicate this species lacks advanced defensive capability. Explain your continued resistance. Doyle, still covered in scorch marks from the corridor fight, leaned toward the comm with a tired grin. Records are wrong, pal. Real wrong. Threx did not appreciate the response. Weapon ports along his flagship's hull began charging, and Reynolds watched helplessly as pressure readings across the station spiked into dangerous territory. "All hands brace for impact," he shouted, and a second later the first strike hit. The station rocked violently, metal groaning under the strain, lights flickering as an entire support strut buckled near the eastern module. Callahan was thrown sideways into a bulkhead, torch clattering from his hand, while Ford grabbed the edge of his console just to stay upright. "We can't take another hit like that," Callahan shouted, scrambling back to his feet, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow. "Structural integrity is failing on deck too." Reynolds keyed the fleet channel again, voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Command, Trident Station is taking direct fire. We need that support now, not later." "Copy, Trident Station, hold on. Kraken is deploying." Ford blinked through the smoke, confused. "Kraken." "Sir, what's Kraken?" Reynolds allowed himself the smallest, grimmest smile of the entire day. "You're about to find out, son." Outside in the crushing black water beyond the failing station lights, something massive stirred inside a reinforced launch bay, bolted to the trench floor half a mile away. A bay that had been quietly built years earlier under a program so classified, most of the crew had never even heard its name mentioned. Thick doors split apart, releasing a burst of pressurized air, and from within emerged a heavily armored combat exosuit the size of a small tank. Its outer plating designed specifically to withstand crushed depths that would flatten a sub